Welcome to Longevity Industries' presentation of the Destiny of Manufacturing podcast. I'm your host, Dean Phillips. Special thanks to the Precision Metal Forming Association and the PMA's Educational Foundation for sponsoring our show today. Our guest today is Bill Gaskin. He comes to us from the Precision Metal Forming Association, coincidentally, where he has recently hung up his reins as the president of the PMA. Bill has served over 40 years and has been a tireless advocate for the forming and fabricating industry. Please welcome Mr. Bill Gaskin.
Dean, thanks very much for having me on today. This is a pretty good opportunity to talk to an audience that the metal forming industry really needs to reach. So I'm delighted to be with you.
Excellent. We're glad to have you. You've had over 40 years just directly in with the PMA, and you've got a lot of knowledge that has brought us to this point in our career as the Precision Metal Forming Association. And you offer a lot of insight. They say that those that don't learn about history are doomed to repeat it. So I'm hopeful that we can take some of your knowledge today from the past and the last 40 years and glean what our future is going to look like in 5 years.
Well, thanks, Dean. I think the biggest opportunity, especially for the listeners, is to understand what the opportunities are in manufacturing, number one, which is such a driver of our economy and our lifestyle and the way we need to live in the future. We can't become a country of non-manufacturers. We have to be making things. And metal forming is just plain core to everything. If it doesn't have metal in it, it's a unique product. Or if metal wasn't used in the tooling that formed the plastic, or the machines that built the technology that was used to make something. So metal is really universal in everything, and metal forming technologies, the idea of giving utility to sheet metal by forming it in machines, historically, is really a core technology. So it's a great opportunity to share with listeners some of what this industry is and what some of the opportunities are.
Excellent. Give us a little bit of your background, how you came to be in this business.
Well, I'm an accidental manufacturer. When I went to college, I wasn't an engineer. I had no family history of manufacturing. But I ended up working for PMA for an odd reason. A friend of mine introduced me to John Jensen, my predecessor, as president of PMA. And he was looking for somebody to work with our local chapters with districts around the country and to be involved in government relations activity, representing the industry on regulatory and technical issues that we face every day with government intervention in our business, or maybe it's government guidance of our business, although I think most manufacturers think about it as intervention. So I came to PMA with no manufacturing background. And to me, it was an enlightening moment. I started to go out and visit companies, and PMA's members are mostly smaller, middle-sized metal stamping companies and suppliers to the metal forming industry. We have divisions of large Fortune 1000 companies as members as well, but that's not our typical profile. The profile really are those companies that are family-held or closely held, and employ between 30 or 40 people up to 500 or 600 people, sometimes a few thousand. And we have some that are divisions of large companies as well. But the common is the technology. It's taking that flat-rolled coil of metal and making useful products from it. So we use metal stamping technology. Of course, tool and die is the core technology to make the dies that forms the metal. Sheet metal fabricating, lasers and turrets to form sheet metal, and then welding, of course, to assemble it into useful products. We have small niche technologies like metal spinning, where it's essentially sort of like pottery with clay, except you take a disc of metal and you put it in a machine and then you form it into a cone or another round shape. So it's a broad industry that offers people so many opportunities at the production level, at the engineering level, at the design level. You can be a welder, you can be a machine operator, you can be a tool and die maker, You can be the accountant in the accounting office. You can be the HR person. So there's a place for everybody when you get involved in manufacturing, and especially in a smaller middle market company of 50 to a few hundred employees.
Yeah, that's as somebody who's come out of working for small companies in my life, I think that the greatest opportunity you find in the smaller markets is that you do become a jack of all trades. You do learn a lot of different things, and you have a lot of diversity in your education that you learn as an apprentice or even as a technician. You do get that diversity in a small company that sometimes the larger companies you don't have that opportunity with. And I think that's something that people have to make a decision about of their careers if they want to work for larger companies or smaller ones, depending on what their calling is and that. Tell me a little bit about if you were to pick out your greatest accomplishment that you've had over your 40 years with the PMA, what would you say it was?
Well, it's always hard to identify one or two things. I think the biggest accomplishment I've had is the ability to work with industry leaders and companies that are members and their owners, their senior managers, their shop floor people to develop training programs, to establish a framework of dealing with the government at all levels, primarily in our case at the federal level in terms of regulations and requirements that the government puts on companies, to be involved in creating trade shows, which we've done over the years at PMA, first as Metalform, our own trade show for the metal forming industry, and now as a partner of the FABTECH show, which is the largest sheet metal forming and welding technology show in North America, to make sure that people have the opportunity to learn and understand and expand their scope of what this industry is all about. I think it's those large-scale things. Over the years at PMA, we basically have taken issues that members bring to us, whether they are technology, whether they're regulatory, whether they are human relations oriented, and sometimes just plain government challenges, and we help solve them. We help the industry and individual companies address their biggest problems.
That's terrific. As part of our show, we like to take a 5-year perspective look out and try and get a good picture. Much like a puzzle, you start putting together the pieces and try and get different people's perspectives to see what it looks like as a whole in its complete 3D form as it's going to slowly manifest itself. What do you see in 5 years for our industry?
Well, I see lots of opportunity and certainly lots of challenges. One of the benefits of the metal forming industry is that it is universal. Metal is strong. Metal is formable. Metal is always being reinvented. There's new chemistries, new capabilities in metal that are being engineered all the time. So it's not stagnant. It's moving fast. And so I think in 5 years we'll continue to see big changes in the kinds of materials that our members are dealing with. We will see changes, continued changes in the technologies used to form the metal. The most sexy, I guess, these days is 3D metal printing, which of course is a real game changer. It's one of those every 20 or 30 year, I think, technology changes. We will see continued automation, continued elimination of routine, burdensome jobs for opportunities for skilled technicians to take advantage of automation and smart machines and make work more satisfying and less physically draining, because metal forming can be physically draining at times. And I think we'll see more globalization. more opportunities for companies, middle market companies in the United States to be supplying all over the world, partly through their customers, their large customers, but also directly. I think there are so many opportunities over the next 5 years. The challenge will be to keep up and to help lead it as an organization for PMA.
That's great. And speaking of leading it, if you talk to some of the younger audience and some of the people that are younger engineers, are best and brightest that are out there today, what if you were to tell them this is what's going to be important and how you can add value and how you can contribute, what things does our industry, the metal forming industry, offer?
Oh, well, I think the most important thing for any young technology person is to keep learning. It's just constantly changing. Over the years that I've been with PMA, we have gone from a dirty, dark, dangerous, and dead-end industry in many people's view. It's heavy manufacturing. There's some grease involved. There's, plants were a little dingy 40 years ago in some cases, to a modern, high-tech, fast-moving technology industry. The changes that are happening in the raw materials, if you're a material scientist or an engineer dealing with metals and metal substitutes, is remarkable. You can achieve things today that you couldn't do 20 and 30 years ago. And tomorrow, who knows? I think the machine tools themselves are getting so smart that it's not scary, but it's wonderful. Because they are eliminating some of the drudgery. They're able to adjust themselves as they operate. They can anticipate demand levels in forming capability and adjust to it on the fly. And of course, they're much, much safer than they were in the old days. So it's really as a young engineer coming into the industry, I think the biggest challenge is pick your field. Where do you want to go? What do you want to be involved in? Do you want to be in smart machines? Do you want to be in the material technologies? Do you want to be in the lubricants? Because they certainly are a game changer for our industry. You've got to be able to make metal flow as if it's liquid. And the way that happens is through proper application of pressure and lubrication and that sort of thing. And then there's the whole human resources side of things. If you happen not to be an engineer, if you happen to be more of a generalist, as I was, the people are still essential. It's not going to be all lights out manufacturing. We're still going to have many, many employees and the ability to work with them and help them do their job to benefit everybody is really going to be key. So there's lots of opportunities for a young person coming into this industry.
Yeah, and continuing on that thought of where things are closing the loop, talking about how manufacturing is seeing a shift into taking information almost like the plan, do, check, act kind of philosophy. Even in the machinery nowadays, we're doing that. We're doing more of that. Mm-hmm. And what do you see as a change that's coming with like the Internet of Things and how that's going to be with the industrial side of that?
Well, I think it'll change. It's been changing really for the last 5 years, 10 years probably, anticipating the Internet of Things, anticipating smarter machines. Years ago, every machine tool stood by itself. 20 years ago, we started to see the internal connection of machines through the internet internally in a building through their computer systems. And so, 20 years ago anyway, certainly we had control panels in an office or a computer room where machines could be monitored and sensors in the machines could be monitored for lubrication and for tonnage and for missing features in a tool because of different pressures that would be encountered in the manufacturing. So, it's not an overnight change, but it's been coming, and it's accelerating because machines are getting smarter. The Internet of Things is real. It's just truly amazing technology where machines talk to each other, and it gives flexibility to the employees as well because you can monitor a machine tool from home at night. over the internet and see that it's running right, or have an alarm go off and wake you up if you happen to be responsible for making sure that a lights out program is running properly. So it's one that's continually evolving, and it's accelerating. As a recently retired association executive who had the pleasure of working with the manufacturing industry for all these years, I really cannot imagine how this industry will look in 10 years. It'll look similar, but the internal operations are going to be very different.
You can see that already changing. You can see how the computers interacting with the equipment, interacting with the people, has shifted in the way that they are responsive, how they're responsive. You don't see as much of somebody taking a work order from the office, walking out on the floor, handing it to somebody. They're doing and building certain parts and then kind of walking it through. There's a much more logical, much more, I guess, high technology perspective of that going on. And the planning, whenever something would be a rush order or things like that would come up, everything would shut down, and the direction that people would have to go in to get there just caused chaos. Now the softwares have gotten so much smarter. The planning that goes on within plants to be reactive is so much better than it was 10, 15 years ago. And I can only imagine that in the next 5 years, that's going to increase to your point, and that I can certainly see that changing. When we talk about workforce adjusting to that, what advice can you give to the future professionals that are coming into this industry to be prepared for that change and to be prepared? Sometimes people say that education is lagging usually in technology for where we are today, so that when people come out, they're being trained on stuff a few years behind what we tell them we need. We tell people, hey, schools, we need you to do this. And by the time they react to it, things have already changed again. And what do you see as things that you can recommend to people to be prepared for?
Yeah, I think it'll be a challenge. Things go in cycles. When I was in high school and growing up many years ago, shop class and the technology programs, auto repair, things like that were pretty common. We had choices. We could go to academic school. We could also get into a trades, particularly if you lived in core cities where manufacturing and those opportunities were important. Or if you grew up on a farm, you were growing up in a school and learning things, but you were also learning how to drive tractors and fix combines and your lawnmower and stuff like that. There was a period, certainly in the 80s, I think, and into the 90s, where a lot of schools changed, and those learning opportunities really went away. Shop classes became something that schools didn't want to pay for. Students, were interested in more academic careers, perhaps, or they were left behind because they didn't have some of the hands-on learning opportunities that they did. And I think one of the great things in the last 10 years, anyway, and it's accelerating, is the reimagining of what high school education, especially, can offer a student. If you're math and science oriented and you want to have your nose in a book and do things, you can do that. And the computers, of course, just make it so much more rewarding. But if you're a hands-on type person and you want to make things or just feel more comfortable working with your hands instead of with computers, you can get exposed to the machine tools. And oh, by the way, they all have computers. And kids are growing up on smartphones and laptops and iPads and everything else these days. So they're very conversant. That's common technology to them. And we're seeing schools starting to change. Many schools are being innovative in their machining programs, their machine tool programs, manufacturing exposure. And, of course, the ability to do online learning today. It used to be you'd have to go out and shoot videotape or make drawings in the old days of things to teach people. Well, today it's all electronic. You can do animation. PMA, in fact, is reinventing legacy video training programs that we did on basic operation of machine tools, the presses and press brakes and the coil feeders and the uncoilers and all the technology that we use to handle these coils of steel in manufacturing. And they were videotapes originally, and then they went to DVDs, and now we're putting it all online. So over this next year, we're spending a significant amount of money as an organization with the support of our members to reinvent it all. And so we're not taking videos anymore. We're doing computer animations. So not only can we show a press line operating with all the ancillary equipment and the key things that you need to do as an operator or a setup person, but we're showing the internal part of the machine. So somebody can envision that, that coil is going through that press and action is happening within the die. Well, you can't see that in a video. But through animation, you can begin to understand what's really happening. So the opportunities through computer technology and smart machines and Internet of Things are going to make education much better for our industry. And we have to just overcome the idea that manufacturing, as I said earlier, is dirty, dark, dangerous, and dead end. It's not. It's an opportunity for high-tech, rewarding careers that can avoid a lot of debt for college education that some people fall into, where they go to school for years and acquire a lot of debt, and then they try to get an accounting job or another kind of a white-collar job, quote-unquote, and they're just missing the opportunity to be a technical person in a manufacturing operation where they can have really rewarding careers and make good money and walk home every day satisfied that, geez, I made things today. And there's nothing better than making things, whether it's baking a cake or making a part. There's a satisfaction in seeing things made. And so I hope that's one of those things that motivates younger people as they look at careers.
Yeah, I'm excited about the changes with STEM curriculums having a resurgence again, and the technology and that we're seeing with when we had Manufacturing Day, for example, a lot of times they'll have robotics competitions, and you see these kids come in and you see that they've built this robot, and the excitement that they have, it is something that is so tangible that anybody that comes to a Manufacturing Day event, which will be broadcast when people actually hear this, it will be Manufacturing Day, and I hope that everybody will be out getting exposed to what these kids can do and the future of it. I know that so many times our younger generation takes a bad hit, and undeservedly so, that they're not going to be that next generation of doing things, but I think they can easily exceed what we've done because they will embrace technology in a way that we couldn't, because the technology that we had didn't even exist at that time. They've all grown up with this technology. The PMA had an article not too long ago talking about attracting the best and brightest, and one of the things that they talked about was how the companies are going to have to shift to embrace mobile technologies, etc., to attract those people. That if that company is utilizing that technology, that will set the tone for those new engineers coming in, those new manufacturers, those new operators, those new tool and die people. And what do you think as far as setting a tone and creating an environment? How do you think that will take place?
Well, you mentioned Manufacturing Day, and for all of the audience that's under 20, get involved with Manufacturing Day. And if you're older than 20, get your company to be involved in Manufacturing Day. It's an opportunity to show youth the opportunities that they have, that there's rewarding careers. You've got to be smart to be involved. You've got to dedicate yourself. It's going to be hard work, but there are huge opportunities. So get out there and go to those Manufacturing Day events. Get a hold of your local school if you need to. look on site on the website. PMA has the Metal Forming Careers website. If you Google PMA.org, you can easily reach our Center for Metal Forming Careers, where there's videos and other materials that you'll be able to download. We'll track companies that are doing Manufacturing Day, and you'll see some of the opportunities for skills and vignettes from employees, people in their 20s who have entered this industry and are talking about how they've been successful, they feel rewarded, they're having a great lifestyle, and challenged every day at work and having fun. There's lots of good videos on that CM4C website, Center for Metal Forming Careers.
Excellent. Well, Bill, thank you so much today for taking part in our podcast. I'd like to thank our sponsor again, the Precision Metal Forming Association and the Precision Metal Forming Association Educational Foundation for sponsoring our Destiny of Manufacturing podcast. And go out there and make a difference. Everybody have a great day.